Well, you know the problem with democracy. I don't think there is any country in the world which does not call itself democratic. All countries in the world call themselves democratic. It's a matter first of definition, I think mainly of definition and of what we regard to be the essentials of democracy. We certainly ourselves regard ourselves as democratic. We understand why countries used to the multi-party system don't believe that a one-party system can be democratic, or are rather suspicious of the one-party system. We can't, frankly, convince them by sheer argument, philosophical argument, that this is possible. Perhaps the best thing is actually to see this thing in practice. What are the essentials of democracy? The essentials of democracy are that individuals should feel unharassed, that they are actually free in their society. Individual, this is the most essential thing. I never see why an individual should not feel free because of a machinery of election. And the two-party or the one-party is really basically a machinery of election. The second one, when it comes to machinery, is that an individual should feel a true choice of the people he wants to represent him in a government where it's no longer possible for people individually to participate in the government, that you have individual representatives. Either sometimes you select parties, sometimes you select individuals. Now, frankly, I don't see why the thing cannot be democratic, simply because sometimes you select a party, which is what the Western countries usually do. And in our own case, you select an individual, the party being given, the party policy being given. So this is the kind of election we went through the other day, and we honestly believe we are independent, and we really ask the old countries at least to be democratic enough, to have a free mind, and to study the new experiments which are taking place in the rest of the world, and this experiment which is taking place in our.
Good morning, East Africa. Good morning, Tanzania. Good morning, Nairobi, Kenya. Good morning, Kampala, Uganda, Bujumbura, Burundi. Vilevile na kule DRC, Congo, ndugu zetu wa SADC, kule maeneo ya Botswana, Namibia, South Africa. Tunaweza tukaenda tupaka kule maeneo ya South Sudan, Somalia, Central Africa na West Africa. Good morning Tanzania. Good morning. Tunajikita zaidi, bado tupo Tanzania, katika jiji la Dar es Salaam, ambapo mwenyekiti wa Chama cha Demokrasia na Maendeleo Chadema, Mheshimiwa Tundu Lissu, bado ameshikiliwa au yuko ndani kwa makosa ambayo yameandikiwa ya kwamba ya uhaini. Kwa hiyo tunasema good morning Tanzania pale, mwachilieni Tundu Lissu bila masharti yoyote. American Swahili News tulizungumza jana hapa na tumerudi tena leo katika kipindi chetu maalum kabisa, ambapo tutawekeni Tundu Lissu msikilize akiongelea masuala haya ambayo yanaendelea katika nchi yetu ya Tanzania, wakati alipokuwa akitembelea, akifanya ziara katika vyuo vikuu vya hapa Marekani, hususan katika University of South Carolina, Dalamo School of Business, ambapo alikuwa amealikwa na Professor Christopher Yenkin ambaye anashughulikia masuala, wanafundisha masuala ya African Affairs and Government Affairs, ambapo amespecialize katika kuwafundisha wanafunzi kuhusiana na masuala ya rushwa au corruption in African governments. Professor Christopher au Chris Yenkin huyu wa University of South Carolina, ambaye amespecialize katika masuala hususan katika sub-Saharan countries na serikali za Afrika, hususan hizo za sub-Saharan country, kuhusiana na masuala ya corruption, ambapo Tundu Lissu alikuwa kama mgeni rasmi kutoa lectures katika madarasa mawili, ambapo ni guest speaker au lecturer wa Dalamo School of Business. Huyu Tundu Lissu ambaye anashikiliwa kwa kupewa kosa ambalo halistahili kabisa, la uhaini katika nchi yake anayoipenda Tanzania, ambao anajaribu kuzungumzia masuala ya uchaguzi bila kutokuwepo na mabadiliko ya uchaguzi, mabadiliko ya sheria za uchaguzi katika nchi ya Tanzania. Uchaguzi mwaka huu wa 2020 hauna ulazima wowote wa kufanyika. Tundu Lissu huyu ambaye alikuwa amealikwa na Christopher Yenken akizungumzia masuala haya haya ambayo yametokea sasa hivi mwaka 2025 na alikuwepo Oktoba 23rd, 2023 na hii ilikuwa ni mara yake ya pili kuja Dalamo School of Business katika University of South Carolina, big university ambayo ina wanafunzi zaidi ya 46,000 na ni campus kama mji mzima, na kuna uwanja mkubwa kuliko wa football ambao unauzidi ule uwanja wa Mkapa zaidi ya mara mbili. University of South Carolina ambao tumepigwa katika finali za women basketball mwaka huu na UConn. USC hapo. Good morning Africa, mtamsikiliza hapa, tutamweka Tundu Lissu, ngoja tumlete hapa kidogo Professor Yenken. Huyu hapo anamkaribisha Tundu Lissu. Karibu Professor Yenken.
Welcoming our guest for today, Mr. Tundu Lissu from Tanzania. It is an honor to have Mr. Lissu with us today. Bear with me for a moment. I've prepared a bit of an introduction to give you a sense of the road that he has traveled on his way here. Mr. Lissu is trained in law. Originally earned his law degree from Tanzania's University of Dar es Salaam before moving on to the University of Warwick in the UK to earn a legal master's degree. Returned to Tanzania to practice law for many years with a particular emphasis in environmental issues and indigenous land rights, especially in that intersection where corporate interests and indigenous land rights tend to produce some friction. For a short period of time, he served as the president of the Tanganyika Law Society, which is Tanzania's version of our American Bar Association, the national professional association that governs the practice of law. He first entered politics in 2010 when he won the parliamentary seat for his home district, and he held that seat for years until 2019. It was during this time that he rose as a member of the opposition Chadema party and was a vocal critic and continues to be to this day of the governing regime in Tanzania. Among other activities, he was central to the preparation of a report that went public showing how senior officials were stealing money from public funds and even openly criticized then President Magufuli and what he called him a petty dictator. He's also an active scholar. He's currently working on his second book. His first book is out. I will admit I have not read it cover to cover, but I have read the synopsis. I think we're going to hear some of it today, the topic of which is how parliamentary and executive structures of the government facilitate rather than impede corruption. Elements of the ruling party in Tanzania have tried repeatedly to silence him. We're glad you're here. Culminating in an assassination attempt on his life in September of 2017. And leading up to that, in that year alone, he was arrested 8 times. He was struck with 16 bullets, one of which is still in his body. He spent 14 months nonstop in hospitals in Nairobi, Kenya, and in Leuven, Belgium, being treated. And as he told me this afternoon, with a total of 25 surgeries. He still carries his wallet, or has his wallet, that has 4 bullet holes in it. He briefly returned to Tanzania to serve as the Chadema opposition party's candidate for the 2020 political election. Earlier this year, he returned to Tanzania full-time, I believe, returning from exile in Belgium. And just last month, he was arrested and briefly detained on his way to a community organizing meeting around indigenous land rights in the northwest part of the country, I believe it was. Right. Mr. Lissu, we're very happy to have you here, and we look forward to learning about your experiences and about how corrupt structures operate from a ground level view. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Can I stand?
You can do anything you want.
Probably want to use the light. I want to put my not here or here. Well, that's no. I think, first of all, please allow me to say thank you for the invitation to come and talk to you, share some of my stories, the stories of my country, the stories from Tanzania, and perhaps stories from Africa. Because what I'm going to say about Tanzania today has a lot of resonance in what is happening in many other African countries. They are not just African stories, I think they are also very human stories. Because the issues that we are dealing with, the issues that I have dealt with, are very human issues. Corruption, malgovernance, abuse of power in its multifarious ways. So these are human stories. I think they will most likely also, you will also find in them American stories too. Professor Yankee has said I was arrested last month going to a political rally to show solidarity with the community that is threatened with eviction from their ancestral lands. The Maasai of Ngorongoro. I don't know how many of you know about Tanzania, but the Serengeti Ngorongoro is one of the most beautiful places on this earth. And that beauty has caused a lot of harm to the local people. The people who are threatened with eviction today were actually evicted in 1959 to create the modern day Serengeti National Park. So when you see those beautiful scenes of animal migration, which involve the movement of more than 1 million wildlife between northern Tanzania and Kenya, when you see those vast empty spaces, empty of human beings, you should know that they are empty not because there were no people there to begin with. They are empty not because that is pristine nature. They are empty because the original inhabitants were driven out of those lands in order to create those empty spaces. Now, those who were kicked out in 1959 to create Serengeti are now being kicked out. And if we allow it to happen, they will be transported some 547 kilometers away to a land where they were not born, where they know nobody, where they are not used to. It is the Maasai's version of the Trail of Tears, if you know what I mean. You know the Trail of Tears? So when I say Tanzanian stories are human stories, nearly 200 years after Andrew Jackson drove out those 5 civilized tribes from southeastern United States to the west of the Mississippi, we are seeing the same thing in Tanzania. These are human stories. But I want to talk about the structures and institutions the governance structures and institutions and processes that allow these things to happen. I want to talk about our constitutional politics and the way those constitutional politics have allowed abuse of power, corporate abuse of power, and I'll come to that very briefly, very shortly, how our constitutional and legal structures and governance structures have created the conditions that allow corruption to thrive and that allow abuse of power and human rights abuses of the most horrible nature to happen. Now, to start with, in documents made public recently in British courts in London, we now know that Barrick Gold Corporation is one of the top 3 leading gold producers in this world. It's a Canadian multinational mining company based in Toronto. We now know, as a result of the publication of those public documents in English courts, that for years, Barrick Gold was paying the Tanzanian police and intelligence and security apparatus to keep the peace in the company's 3 gold mines in Tanzania. Barrick Gold, according to those documents, was paying was making monthly cash transfers officially to the Tanzanian police force and to the intelligence and security agency to make payments for police officers, paramilitary units, and intelligence officers to keep the communities at bay in the areas around the mines. Now, you would wonder why would a Canadian mining company pay millions of dollars to Tanzanian security forces to keep the peace? What has happened in those areas? In Tanzania's mining fields, Tanzania is Africa's 3rd largest gold producer now. Now, in the process of transforming the country into the 3rd largest producer of gold in Africa involved a state-organized violence against hundreds of thousands of rural people who were living in the lands which are now gold mines owned by Barrick, and tens of thousands of artisanal gold miners who worked those fields before Barrick moved in. So the process of Barrick obtaining the gold reserves that it currently exploits in Tanzania was a very violent one. It involved forcible evictions of perhaps hundreds of thousands of people. My first arrest came on Christmas Eve of 2002, and it was because for 3 years I had led a campaign to expose the human rights abuses associated with those evictions, with Barrick acquiring those areas. So it has been paying millions of dollars to Tanzanian security agencies in order to continue keeping the communities out. when the documents were released a few weeks ago, it made major, it was front page news in one of the leading British newspapers. It was on the Times of London. It was on the Financial Times and so on. It came as a surprise to many. But it did not come as a surprise at all to those of us who had been involved in the fight against this company. It didn't come as a surprise to the thousands, the tens of thousands of communities whose lands were taken away by force to make room for Barrick to build its gold mines. In other words, we have known for years that for Barrick to operate, they have had to pay off a lot of people within the government of Tanzania. They have had to pay a lot of people within our security agencies. So it didn't come as a surprise to us at all. The mere fact that the proceedings that led to the publication of these documents in London, instead of perhaps Dar es Salaam, should tell you something about Tanzania. I spent more than a decade trying to prosecute Barrick in our courts. It didn't work at all. It didn't work at all. I didn't get nowhere. It couldn't get a hearing anywhere in our courts. Couldn't get any sympathy anywhere within our government or the press. And then we realized that maybe we have to find ways of fighting them in courts where there is a possibility of getting a hearing. And that's how we went to Great Britain. So cases that have been filed in the UK have led to the publication of these documents. And there is a lot of stuff that has come out as a result. And perhaps those who could not get justice in Tanzanian courts may get justice in British courts after all. It is because our courts are part of the problem. Our courts are thoroughly corrupt, and they have been corrupted by these big corporate players such as Barrick. Now, I said I want to talk about the constitutional structures, the constitutional and legal structures that allow these things to happen. So I would like to give you some background about our constitutional order, our political and constitutional order. And that, to me, is where the central problem of corruption lies, and the central problem of abuse of power and abuse of office. Tanzania has a political system and a constitutional system that resembles somewhat the American political system. We are not a parliamentary democracy. We are a presidentialist democracy. We have an executive presidency like the United States. We don't call ours the Supreme Court, but we have our version of the Supreme Court. It is called the Court of Appeal of Tanzania. It is both an appellate court as well as a court of original jurisdiction. we have parliament. It is not a two-chamber parliament like your Congress. It is a single-chamber parliament. Now, where is the problem? The problem is Tanzania's constitutional order, our constitutional order, is built around the presidency. Our president and our presidency has been described by constitutional scholars as an imperial presidency. An imperial presidency in the sense that the Tanzanian president enjoys the kind of powers, of constitutional powers, that were enjoyed by European monarchs of the time before the 19th century revolutions, the age of revolutions in the 1840s and so on. Our president enjoys absolute powers. Our president is not only a head of state, he or she, now we have a she. I have some water. Is there possibility? Yeah, please. Okay, thanks. I'm sorry. Our president, now it's a she, enjoys the kind of powers that are similar to the powers that 18th century European monarchs enjoyed. Unlimited powers. She's the head of state. She's the chief of government. She's the commander-in-chief of the armed services, of all of our armed services, including prisons and the police force. Our police force is a national police force. As a head of state, the Tanzanian president is also part of parliament. Our constitution is our parliament is divided into two parts. You have the House of Representatives. It is called National Assembly, composed of elected, semi-elected, and unelected members. And the other part is the president. Now, you only find that model in Britain. You only find that model in Imperial Britain. The British king is always a part of British Parliament. Now, our president is part of our parliament. So when we say imperial presidency, in fact, it is literally true. Our president has powers and privileges and prerogatives that are similar to British kings or British monarchs. So she is now, but she is part of parliament. She not only assents to bills that are enacted into laws, she also gets to appoint a certain number of members of parliament. So our parliament, unlike the House of Representatives here or Senate, our National Assembly is made up not only of members elected in constituencies, it also is composed of members who are appointed by the president, 10 of them. As head of state, our president has power not only to summon parliament to sit or to prorogue it. To prorogue is to send it home. Our president has powers to even dissolve the National Assembly. He can dissolve our parliament. I wonder if the President of the United States has powers to dissolve Congress. Ours does. If our parliament passes a law that the president does not like, he can veto it. The parliament has power to override that veto. If the president still doesn't like the law, he has power to send parliament packing. So in terms of the relationship between the presidency and the legislature, the shadow of the president towers over our legislature. There is no check and balances there. The president has more influence, even inside parliament. As chief of government, the president of Tanzania appoints anyone of consequence. He appoints, again, now that she's a lady, she appoints all ministers and their deputies. She appoints all heads of government departments, heads of independent institutions of the government, like public universities. She appoints local, district, and regional administrators. She appoints all judges and other senior judicial officers and administrators. She appoints all members of constitutional commissions, constitutional or statutory commissions, commissions such as the National Electoral Commission. So she gets to appoint the heads and members of the Electoral Commission, the Judicial Service Commission, every commission that you can think of. Its chairpersons and members are appointed by the president and their chief executives. She appoints the clerk of the National Assembly. The clerk of the National Assembly is the chief executive officer of parliament. She appoints all the service chiefs, the armed forces, and commanders of individual units of the armed forces. She appoints the police chiefs and senior police officers. And the Constitution declares that for those public servants who are not directly appointed by the president, they are deemed to be appointed by her and they work on her behalf. So think of a clerk or a cleaner in a courtroom somewhere in rural Tanzania, and she's deemed by our Constitution to be appointed by the president, and she works on behalf of the president. Because the president appoints all judges, you can be sure that our judiciary is not independent at all. She not only appoints judges, she is also the ultimate disciplinary authority over all judicial officers. She is the ultimate disciplinary authority over all public servants in the country. She can hire and fire anybody. She has powers to constitute and to disestablish public offices. She can create ministries and appoint ministers as she wants. It is a complete discretion. So when we speak of imperial presidency, that is what we mean. A presidency of this type is not only powerful, it is also protected against accountability. It is protected against any form of accountability. Our president cannot be charged in court with any crime for anything she or he might do while in office. So the immunity is complete. What is happening now here with Donald Trump is unheard of in Tanzania. In fact, people are shocked that these Americans are prosecuting a former president for actions that he may have done while he was a sitting president. That is unthinkable for a country like Tanzania, because the president enjoys complete immunity from prosecution. And that is why you have a spectacle of a former president, Ben Mkapa. He was our third president. In 2019, a year before he died, he published his memoir in which he explains somewhere about how he and some of his senior advisors connived to steal $100 million from the Bank of Tanzania, from our central bank, in order to provide campaign funds for the ruling party, for his party and its presidential candidate. So President Jakaya Kikwete, our fourth president, was elected, if we have to believe President Mkapa, was elected on stolen money. So think of an American president writing memoirs in which he's saying, well, I was a thief, and he getting away with it. So President Mkapa could get away with it because the immunity against prosecution for former presidents is near total. And we have seen time and again presidents, our presidents, while in office, committing crimes for which, if they were committed by somebody else, they would send that somebody else to prison for many, many years. Stealing has become institutionalized, and it is organized at the very highest levels of our government. It is done fairly openly. And it is done that way because our constitution has given complete protection to presidents. It is not just immunity against prosecution. Our presidents also have prerogatives that remind you of 18th century European monarchs. Our president can pardon convicted criminals regardless of whatever crime they may have committed. I know that is an issue here too. Now the prerogative of mercy, as that thing is called, is a drawback to European monarchies of the type that was led the patriots in this country to fight the British. Prerogative of mercy, so he can pardon prisoners regardless of their crimes. The president can declare war, states of emergency. He has powers to detain citizens without taking them to court. This is an innovation, one of the first innovations of independent Tanganyika, by the way. The British, in spite of the oppressive nature of the British colonial state, in Tanganyika and other colonies, they never had detention without trial. That is a post-colonial innovation. So, in brief, the presidential shadow hovers over the nation like, you know, it's horrible. You cannot run away from the evil shadow of the presidency. Our president has near total control of the electoral process. She gets to appoint members of the National Electoral Commission and its chief executive officer, as well as those who declare results in a presidential election, the returning officers in electoral districts. Our law requires local government executives to be returning officers in general elections, and all of these are presidential appointees. So the entire machinery of elections is controlled by the president.
Oh boy. Sasa hapo ndipo tumesimama hapo ambapo amezungumzia katiba yetu inapompa mamlaka rais wa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania katika maeneo sasa ya uchaguzi, ambapo tupo katika kipindi cha uchaguzi kicha no reform no election, na alikwenda zaidi na kuelezea hii katiba yetu hii ya sasa hivi ambayo inampa rais wa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania kuchagua hii tume hii inayoitwa Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi, ambao bado inampa rais mamlaka ya kuchagua mwenyekiti, wajumbe pamoja na mkurugenzi wa tume ya uchaguzi. Rais huyu wa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania, katiba ndio inavyozungumza hivyo. Sasa na huyu rais huyu anaweka hawa watu wake anawaona wanafaa, na rais huyu ndiye mgombea wa kiti cha urais kupitia Chama cha Mapinduzi. Sasa tutaendelea kesho tuone, au tutaonyesha wanafunzi waliokuwepo darasani pale walivyoshangaa. Inawezekana vipi? Mfano, kama kungekuwa kuna mfumo wa uchaguzi wa Marekani hapa, Trump anachagua National Election Commission. Haipo, hakuna kitu kama cha National Election Commission hapa Marekani. Kuna hiki kitu kinaitwa Election Board. Watu wanaomba nafasi kuingia katika bodi ya commission ya uchaguzi. Private citizen. Uchaguzi hapa Marekani unasimamiwa na private citizen, watu wa kawaida tu ambao hawako affiliated na chama chochote kile cha siasa, wanaomba kwenda kufanya kazi katika election board. Katika county level, labda tuseme tarafa Tanzania au wilaya, wanakuwepo watu wanaomba kazi, wanachaguana wenyewe huko kwa kuangalia sifa na kuangalia background za hawa watu, pamoja na kuangalia their credit history za hawa watu, criminal records, credit history zao, na kuangalia kama hawana criminal records. Private citizen. Lakini Tanzania rais anawachagua hawa watu, kama Mheshimiwa Tundu Lissu, kama mlivyomsikia alivyokuwa akitoa ili somo hapo. Tujifikirie sisi wa Tanzania, tujifikirie katika karne hii ya 21. Sisi ni binadamu aina gani ambaye tumemtengeneza rais wa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania eti kama Mungu. Lakini sio wa Tanzania wote milioni 62 ambao wanaamua, ambao wanavyofikiria hivi kwamba rais wa Tanzania ni Mungu. Ni kikundi kidogo cha watu wachache kinachomzunguka rais, ambacho kinapata hizi tunaita perks au benefits, na kumshauri rais wa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania katika karne hii vibaya, ili wao na wenzao wanaozunguka wale, sio Tanzania mamilioni, wachache wao waendelee kunufaika na hizi wazungu tunaziita perks au benefits. Kesho tutafanya mwendelezo kwa sababu tumekwenda zaidi ya dakika 45. Hili lilikuwa ni somo zuri kweli kweli, linatolewa kwa lugha ya kigeni, mtatusamehe kidogo, kwa Kiingereza, lakini mambo ni yale yale yanayozungumziwa na kina Heche sasa hivi na Mheshimiwa Tundu Lissu kabla hawajamkamata kumweka jela. Mambo ni yale yale ambayo hauhitaji kuwa na PhD Mtanzania ambayo unaisapoti CCM. Umaskini wetu tumeutengeneza wenyewe, watu tunakisapoti Chama cha Mapinduzi kwa vitu wanavyovifanya hizi. Tunafikiria, tuna ndoto kwamba eti hawa viongozi wa CCM kwa mfumo huu wa uchaguzi tuliokuwa nao watakuja kutuletea maendeleo. Tuna ndoto hizo, wazungu wanasema dream, ambayo tumepewa na kutengenezewa na hawa viongozi wa Chama cha Mapinduzi. Sasa tujiulize, mwaka 1958 na 59 na 60 na 61 yalizungumzwa maneno haya haya ya kuwaondoa wakoloni ili kuja kuleta maendeleo katika nchi yetu. Hata baba wa taifa huyu Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere alisema hivi, ili tuendelee tunahitaji watu, ardhi, siasa safi na viongozi bora. Wakati huo tukaamini hivyo. Hebu tuseme tu kwamba tunaamini sasa hivi maneno aliyozungumza baba wa taifa yalikuwa sawa wakati huo, miaka ya 58, 59 na 60. Sasa je, katika mwaka huu wa 2025 kama kweli tuna watu ndio wapo maskini kweli kweli, ardhi tunayo ambayo Heche anazungumza kweli kweli, tuna ardhi kubwa kweli kweli ambayo imebarikiwa na imependelewa na Mwenyezi Mungu. Hatuna siasa safi na uongozi bora. Kama tungekuwa na siasa safi na uongozi bora, Mheshimiwa Tundu Lissu asingekuwepo keko. Lakini kitu gani kinakosekana kati ya hivyo vitu vinne ili kuondoa ujinga, maradhi na umaskini wetu katika nchi yetu ya Tanzania? Tunazungumza tu na mifumo mizuri ya uchaguzi, tuweke viongozi ambao labda wana maarifa ya kutuwezesha kutuondolea maradhi, ujinga na umaskini wetu. Tukibadilisha mifumo yetu ya uchaguzi na wananchi wakachagua viongozi wanaowataka, kama baba wa taifa tulivyomwanza kumcheza mwanzo hapa katika kipindi chetu hiki cha Good Morning Africa, Good Morning East Africa, tukaweka viongozi wenye maarifa ambapo wanaweza kutuondolea ujinga, maradhi na umaskini tuliokuwa nao zaidi ya miaka 63 hivi sasa hivi. Tunaachia meseji hii wa Tanzania wanaoifuatilia American Swahili News pamoja na Swahili Villa Online TV. Wakae chini, wafikirie katika kipindi hiki cha Good Morning Africa, Good Morning East Africa, ambapo ni asubuhi saizi wa Tanzania wengi wanaelekea makazini, kufikiria swala hili kwamba tunahitaji viongozi wenye maarifa ambao watatuondolea ujinga, maradhi na umaskini. Na tuna watu, tuna ardhi, hatuna uongozi bora na siasa safi Tanzania. Haiwezekani sisi Tanzania ambao Mwenyezi Mungu ametupendelea kweli kweli, tuna ardhi, tuna kila kitu katika chini ya ardhi, tuna ardhi yenye utuba, tuna watu zaidi ya milioni 62, lakini mpaka leo hii tuna matatizo katika kufikia wakati wa uchaguzi. Tujitafakari na tujiulize wa Tanzania, tumetoka wapi, tuko wapi, tunaelekea wapi? Hakuna sababu yoyote ile ya kumpiga mtu risasi 16, kutokuwepo na kesi yoyote ya kuwatafuta wale waliohusika na jaribio hilo la mauaji la kisiasa au political assassination. Na mtu huyo ambaye alipigwa risasi 16 anakamatwa na kutuhumiwa kwa kosa ambalo halina maana yoyote, na hakuna kitu chochote ambacho hii serikali hata kama ikipewa miaka mingine 60 inaweza kukifanya kwa wananchi wa Tanzania. Watanzania wafuasi wa Chama cha Mapinduzi, tunawaomba waungane na wanachadema na wafuasi wanaopenda mabadiliko Tanzania ili tuweze kuleta mabadiliko katika nchi yetu. Kwanza tunamwomba Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan, leo ni siku ya pili, kumwachia mwenyekiti wa Chama cha Demokrasia na Maendeleo Chadema, Mheshimiwa Tundu Lissu, na kumfutia mashtaka yote yaliyofunguliwa na kuwashtaki wale ambao wanazungumza maneno. Kwa mfano, Chama cha Demokrasia na Maendeleo Chadema kinafanya mchango na diaspora kununua virusi vya Ebola ili kuwaua Watanzania. Huyu ni nani aliyezungumza maneno hayo? Ni Amos Makala. Tunaomba serikali hii ambayo imejiingiza madarakani isivyo kihalali mwaka 2020 imchukulie hatua huyu Amos Makala kwa kumkamata na kumuondoa katika nafasi yake ya ukatibu mwenezi wa Chama cha Mapinduzi kwa kuyazungumza hayo maneno ambayo ni hatari kweli kweli, ambayo inaweza kaleta mchanganyiko na kutokuelewana kwa Watanzania hapo na vile vile mataifa ya nje, hususan ya huku magharibi. Mpaka leo hii huyu Amos Makala bado anaendelea kuwepo katika nafasi yake kama mwenezi wa Chama cha Mapinduzi, na hatuelewi serikali ya Chama cha Mapinduzi inaipeleka ili taifa katika sehemu gani au katika mwelekeo gani katika kipindi hiki. Kwa hiyo basi tunamalizia kipindi chetu cha Good Morning Africa, Good Morning East Africa kwa kuombeni Watanzania wote ambao mnaitakia nchi yenu wanasema nini, amani, lakini sisi tunazungumzia haki ya Mtanzania na haki ya Tundu Lissu. Tundu Lissu aachiwe na asifunguliwe mashtaka yoyote na wala asipelekwe mahakamani hiyo tarehe 24 ya mwezi huu ambapo anatakiwa kwenda mahakamani. Kwa hiyo basi tunamalizia kipindi chetu cha Good Morning Africa, Good Morning East Africa kwa kuombeni. Dr. William Cheno huyo anasema sure. Kwa kuombeni kwa wale ambao hamjasubscribe, nendeni mkasubscribe, mshare na kulike video zetu kupitia katika kipindi chetu hiki cha Good Morning Africa, Good Morning East Africa, Good Morning Africa. Mtangazaji wenu wa siku zote Dr. Patrick Nikula wa American Swahili News pamoja na Swahili Villa Online TV, ambapo tunakuja moja kwa moja live kutoka katika studio zetu za hapa Columbia, South Carolina. Tunaomba Tundu Lissu aachiwe huru. Wale ambao mnaelekea makazini, naona tunajua leo huko Tanzania ni siku ya Jumanne, nendeni msambaze upendo, mpendane na muombe Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan amwachie Tundu Lissu haraka iwezekanavyo, na tuendelee na maisha Tanzania, tuelekee katika uchaguzi ambao utakuwa ni uhuru na haki. Tufanye mabadiliko katika maeneo yetu, maeneo yote yale ambayo yanaombwa na Chama cha Demokrasia na Maendeleo Chadema yafanyiwe mabadiliko haraka kabisa ili waingie katika uchaguzi ambao serikali hiyo ambayo itakaoshinda uchaguzi ili iweze kutambulika katika mataifa, katika ulimwengu wa kimataifa na au international community. Bila kutambulika katika international community hakuna kitu kinachoweza kwenda hapo katika nchi yetu ya Tanzania. Tutarudishwa nyuma zaidi ya miaka 20 au 30. Kutatokea matatizo makubwa kabisa katika nchi yetu ya Tanzania, na tunataka tujaribu tutumie busara na hekima, tumwachie Tundu Lissu, yafanyike reforms katika elections, ufanyike uchaguzi wa uhuru na wa haki katika nchi yetu ya Tanzania. Tunamalizia kipindi chetu hiki cha leo cha Good Morning Africa. Good morning, producer, kama ambao sio sahihi, tuangalie kitu gani hapa na nani mwingine tena. Naye amesema free Tundu Lissu, ale Sago free Tundu Lissu. Nani mwingine tena ambaye tujamweka hapa. Kwa hiyo kesho tutamalizia hii speech ya Tundu Lissu ambapo alikuwa akizungumza katika Dalamo School of Business, na vile vile tunaombeni ambao msubscribe, nendeni mkasubscribe American Swahili News pamoja na Swahili Villa Online TV na turn on your notifications. Kesho tunakwenda kumalizia hotuba hii ya Tundu Lissu aliyotoa October 23rd, 2023, ambayo inashabiana kabisa na haya ambayo yametokea sasa hivi. Tunasema peace, sambazeni upendo moja kwa moja kutoka katika studio zetu za hapa Pombe pamoja na kule Washington DC. Mtangazaji wenu wa siku zote Dr. Patrick Ligula wa American Swahili News pamoja na Swahili Villa Online TV. Peace.